Well, you heard it here first when the news broke in the last hour. The Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that Quebec discriminated against female refugee claimants by introducing regulations that denied them access to subsidized daycare spots. In a decision, like just moments ago, the court says that blocking refugee claimants from subsidized daycare threatens to marginalize them from society. Case originated with a woman from the Democratic Republic of Congo who applied for asylum. Now, the province subsequently denied access to our subsidized daycare network for the woman's 3 children. They were denied because Quebec's rules say you need to be granted refugee status. If you're a claimant, not good enough. Once you get granted status, you can access the daycare programs, but not if you're simply a claimant. The court says that's not good enough. It was an 8-1 ruling. We have some feedback already from one of the candidates for the leadership of the CAQ. It's Bernard Drainville, and he says this: the Supreme Court ruling is a slap in the face to the thousands of Quebecers who are waiting for a spot in childcare for their child, often for years. These same Quebecers who have always paid taxes and fees and don't have priority access to services, it's unacceptable. There are 6,000 subsidized daycare spots occupied by the children of asylum seekers. If I'm elected, I will use the notwithstanding clause to give priority to Quebecers for these services. Let's head over now to Jamie Sarkonak. She's a columnist with the National Post. Jamie, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You know, I know you were booked to talk about something completely, something, well, maybe actually pretty similar, the decline of Canada. but I've seen you tweeting about this, and you've looked at this court ruling this morning. What are your thoughts on this 8-1 decision by the Supreme Court of Canada?
Wow. Well, I'm still going over it because it's quite long, but already just off the top, it's raising so many concerns with me. One, just the general theme, this is about giving state benefits, part of our social safety net to asylum claimants. That is not a refugee, an official refugee or protected person. It's someone who's been approved through our system. And our system is not very good at weeding out the fake ones. Let's be clear. So not even that is perfect, but that is at least a standard. But a refugee or asylum claimant, is someone who shows up and says, I'm claiming asylum. And it can take years to process these people. And while they're here, they get a very, I would say, hefty healthcare plan. And I guess in Quebec now, they're also going to get this because the court says the charter requires them to. That's an incentive for migration. That's an incentive for people to show up and see what they can get out of the Canadian system, regardless of how much they actually need to be sheltered by Canada. They get so much free stuff with it. It's kind of according to the math for them, family finance, makes sense to come to Canada and see what you can get. And so this further incentivizes that because it says, hey, the charter requires us, before we even look at how legitimate your claim is, requires us to give you free daycare, which, wow. I mean, that's our tax dollars.
And I'll tell you this, Jamie, I've had this argument made on this program this week on stories like this one. And I've heard this comeback, which is, well, you know what? The government should then spend more money on dealing with the claimants. Make sure they actually process them quickly. That the problem here isn't governments giving services. It's the fact that the government isn't doing a good enough job assessing these claims. What do you say to that? Is that a good comeback to what we heard from the Supreme Court this morning?
There's some of that because the claims, I would agree, should be processed very quickly. Instead of taking several years, it should take a month. But there are a couple of issues with that. One, the sheer volume of asylum claims has shot through the roof. We're getting tons of claims from countries where there is no war. We're getting claims from France, believe it or not. Not many in the grand scheme of things, but our system is so wide open. It allows a whole range of people from a whole range of situations to come in.
Yeah, and with
that tide, it's a tsunami. It's not just a few more. There's no way our system could possibly keep up. You can dump more money into it, but it's not even worth it at this point. What we need to be doing is just looking at which country they're coming from and saying, we're just taking this out of the stack completely. You can't claim asylum here.
And what's interesting here, Jamie, is that, with rulings like this, you can argue that the list is just going to get longer. What you've told a whole lot of people around the world is like, here is yet another benefit if you're going to come to Canada. And this of course, this ruling is about Quebec, but I'm sure it's going to reverberate across the country with other provinces and their social programs here. I want to ask you, because you're already pointing this out online on X, you're pointing out Chief Justice Richard Wagner, and part of what he wrote in this ruling. You say what Chief Justice Richard Wagner wrote takes the extremely anti-Canadian position that asylum claimants should get charter equality rights. Talk to me about that. Why do you call it anti-Canadian?
Well, what Wagner said was, the equality protection section of the Charter should apply to refugee claimants. And we just went over why claimants doesn't really mean anything. You show up and you can get it by filling out paperwork. Yeah. So to give a bunch of charter protections to this kind of group, and charter equality protections can be used to justify all sorts of other benefits from Canada. So if you want to make them a charter protected group, just by showing up and again filling out a form, you are extending. First of all, you're extending Canada's social safety net in multiple ways, not just with regard to healthcare, to this group, and you're also just cheapening what it means to be Canadian. Canadian state benefits are for us. We pay into them. Our grandparents paid into them. A lot of us have paid into it over generations. And in return for our hard work, we expect the state to take care of us to some degree. And that's a really important part of the deal. If we don't want, I guess if we exploit that safety net, we're not going to have it anymore because it's just going to get overburdened. We're going to run out of capacity. It's not going to function properly. But there's a fine deal in that process where, we contribute, we get back. So what he's saying is we contribute and also they get to take from it. Mm-hmm. There's not really fairness in there, and it just totally degrades the deal of being Canadian.
But Jamie, I should point this out, and others are pointing it out. The lower courts, both of them ruled against Quebec. Now the Supreme Court. What are all the judges just wrong, or are we the ones that are looking at this the wrong way?
Well, yeah. If you ask the judges, they'll say they're very enlightened and correct. But it is really unfortunate that the Canadian judiciary is becoming so politicized. The upper courts that's courts of King's Bench or courts of appeal, and the Supreme Court have been appointed by the Liberals for as long as the Liberals have been in, and they have been appointing increasingly politically minded lawyers and judges to these positions. And we're seeing the effects of that. And, they started doing this a long time ago, but because they've been doing it for 10 years, we're starting to really feel the effects. Just about every Supreme Court decision that comes out now has some absurdity in it that comes from a combination of these are not actually high-quality judges that they're appointing in, and two, these are actually politically minded judges in addition to not being the greatest legal minds out there. And the consequences are so severe. Look at this. They're saying that Canadian citizenship doesn't really mean what it used to. It's just a categorization. And yeah, that's going to have serious effects for us. So are they wrong? I would say, yeah, you guys are totally forgetting the first principles of what it means to be Canadian, because you're getting into the minutia of how to extend the charter further. And no one's actually thinking about that in their day-to-day life. Everyone's thinking, my gosh,
Jamie,
what does being Canadian even mean anymore?
Jamie, to wrap up here, notwithstanding clause, you heard me tell you one candidate for the CAQ leadership says he's going to do it. Should they? Do you want to see the notwithstanding clause used here?
Yes, and more provinces need to be talking about that just in general, because the further the charter gets expanded, the more we need to push back. Because when the judges make decisions that are wildly out of alignment with the general public's beliefs, this isn't democracy anymore. That was the whole point of having an election. But the judge comes in and says, no, the laws that the people you elected made actually don't align with our values. That undermines democracy is what it is. So yes, use the notwithstanding clause. But unfortunately, the notwithstanding clause is also before the Supreme Court right now. So to add a layer of complication, the Supreme Court comes back in, I don't know when, a few months and says, actually, the notwithstanding clause has limits. You can't use it in all these situations. And they might give us a list. I don't know. But they could limit it. And then we're in serious trouble because that's our last line of defense against a completely unchecked court.
Yeah,
so,
and separation, support for separation is at almost an all-time low right now. Just wait if the Supreme Court goes down that path. Jamie, I got to leave it there. Come back soon where we can talk about what we were supposed to talk about, okay?
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
Go check out Jamie Sarkonak. She's got a wonderful Twitter that you can check out as well. Sarkonak J is that Twitter, and read her words at the National Post.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.